And I'd like to introduce Diane Nygaard, President of Preserve Calavera.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for the clapping. My goodness. I'm sure we each have our own reason for being here today. What I want to share with you is my aha moment that occurred about 5 years ago. We were doing a family vacation to Glacier Park with my sister and her 16-year-old triplet sons. It had been a dream of hers for some time to duplicate something we'd done 40 years earlier when she was 16. Same trip to Glacier. But it was one of those magical trips where you have this wonderful family connection and connection to nature and connection to the universe that you remember for the rest of your life. And she wanted that same experience for her children. So there we were in Glacier. It was much different than it had been 40 years earlier. We took a docent hike at Logan Pass. The ranger started talking about the implications, what they've already seen with climate change in Glacier Park. And of course, when you're in a mountain area like that, as temperature rises, what happens? The animals, and to some extent the plants, start moving up to higher elevations. And so she talked about the changes they had documented in the park over the last few years and the other changes they could see coming. And she ended with one question. What happens when we get to the top of the mountain and there's nowhere else to go? That was my aha moment. We're really all on that mountain. It's not so obvious when we look around us here, but we are on the mountain too. And that was my aha moment. I'm here because I want to make a difference right here on our mountain, in our communities. I expect that's why you're here. Let's look at kind of the big picture of greenhouse gas emissions. And my clue is I'm going to hold my finger up, see if that works. If you think about gases, greenhouse gases are made up of a number of different gases, CO2, methane, some others as well. But gas, so think about a ton of gas, how much that is. And globally, going back a few years ago, the global emissions were 22.7 billion metric tons. 22.7 billion metric tons. The United States, of course, does way more than our fair share of emissions. We're about 20% of the world total. We weren't the biggest emitter, though. Sure, everybody knows who was the biggest emitter? China. A few years ago, they were 22%. They're, of course, higher than that now. The third highest was India at 5%. So clearly, we are way above our proportionate share in the world. If we look at the United States picture, those of us who live here in California, we're only about 7% of the total emissions for the country. So not so bad per capita compared to other places, but we don't have the same challenges for heating and cooling, which is a big contributor to that. But if we look at the biggest cause in California of emissions, what is it? Transportation. We love our cars, and that's our biggest source. Second source, electric generation. And that's all of those fossil fuel burning power plants all over the state. Those are the two big picture ones. So a few years ago, the San Diego Foundation did some research about what are going to be the impacts of climate change in our region here in San Diego. And of course, one of the big ones, sea level rise. This is what the oceanside harbor could look like by 2050. All those colored areas. We will see sea level rise between 1.1 and 10.5 feet by 2050. Imagine what that is like by then. Of course, the drought is very much with us these last few days as we move into the next phase of drought restrictions. I was at a city council meeting in Oceanside a couple of weeks ago, and one of our council members said, "This is just a temporary condition." Oh, God. Some of us don't think so. And of course, if you remember last May, the skies in much of North County looked like this at night. And we had the worst series of early May wildfires in San Diego has ever seen. And we know that the frequency and severity of wildfires will be increasing with climate change in our region. And of course, there are significant health impacts, not just vector issues like West Nile virus, which we're starting to see some of those kinds of things coming into our areas. The American Lung Association recently issued their last year's study of air quality impacts. San Diego, again, got an F for ozone. 27 days last year, breathing the air put you at health risk. I guess we just stopped breathing those 27 days of the year. And of course, who's most at risk? Our children, our seniors, people who are already health compromised, and our low-income communities. They don't have the choice of just cranking up the air conditioner if they don't have air conditioning. And of course, close to dear to many of our hearts are the very special critters that we share this part of San Diego with. Worldwide, climate change, we're looking at losing 50% of the species on Earth, 50% of the species on Earth. Here in San Diego, we've got over 60 narrow endemic species. They only live in the rare set of circumstances in this area. What happens to them? These are all serious implications for our communities. So if we look at the sources of emissions here in San Diego, just like the rest of the state, we love our cars. That transportation piece, again, is the biggest single contributor of greenhouse gases in our region. Second is electricity. Third, natural gas. And then you can lump a lot of other things together. So we can see where are the areas to focus on that can really make a difference. So what is a CAP? Since that's what we're here to talk about today, Climate Action Plan. Here's the definition of it from the City of Vista's adopted Climate Action Plan. It is a long-range plan. The goal is to reduce greenhouse gases. It is to address both the municipal operations, what the city does directly, as well as the entire community-wide emissions, everything that happens within the boundaries of your community. It is to prepare us for the anticipated impacts of climate change. And the question for all of us as we go through this today, are those local CAPs really doing that job? We don't think so. We've got a ways to go. So why should we engage in a CAP? This is a place where local government decides. This is a part of government that's closest to us. We know these people. We put them into office. They're the only place that really has a legal obligation. The Chamber of Commerce, the business community, us as individuals, we don't have legal obligations, but our local government does have an obligation. These are the things that impact us every day. The traffic congestion that we sit in, the emissions that we breathe, whether there's bike lanes, planting of trees, these are the things that affect our quality of life. They're closest to our day-to-day living. And we've got some mandates, we've got some hooks with local government that we can take advantage of. Both in terms of if they're doing a general plan update or any individual project that's moving forward in our communities. So as we go through this process today, really think about, we have the power. We have the political power to influence those people who make the decisions. We have the legal power, and we have the power of our hearts engaging in the community and the things that we care about. So we're going to use that power to make a difference.